The bright sunlight poured through the windows of the dealership, casting long shadows across the rows of shiny cars. It was a busy day at the lot. Young buyers walked around, chatting with salesmen, testing out new cars, dreaming of a future on the road. But one woman stood out among the crowd. She was elderly, her graying hair tied neatly in a bun, and her steps were slow but steady. Her name was Linda. She had come to buy a car, something reliable, something that could take her to the places she needed to go, without a fuss. She wasn't a stranger to hard work, nor was she a stranger to having her dreams overlooked. But today, she was determined to buy a car. A simple one. A car she could depend on. The moment Linda walked into the dealership, her presence barely registered. The salesmen were busy with younger customers, the ones with flashy clothes and modern attitudes. Linda didn't expect any special treatment, and she wasn't going to ask for it. She just wanted a car. As Linda walked past the rows of vehicles, her eyes gleamed. She had already decided on the kind of car she wanted. A modest sedan, simple and practical. She had the money for it, but no one could guess that from looking at her. Linda's shoes were worn, her coat was plain, and she carried a purse that had seen better days. But she didn't mind. She had worked hard all her life, and she was proud of every dollar she had earned. That's when she caught the eye of Jordan, a young salesman leaning casually against a desk. His smile was wide, confident, and full of charm. At least, that's how he thought of it. He had seen people like Linda before. The older generation, the ones who didn't know much about cars, the ones who couldn't afford the top models. They were easy to impress, easy to take advantage of. His smile widened when he saw Linda walking toward him. "Good afternoon, ma'am. How can I help you today?" he said, his voice oozing with fake warmth. Linda smiled back, polite but tired. "I'm looking for a simple car, something dependable." Jordan's eyes quickly scanned her from head to toe. He saw her clothes, her walking cane, the way she held her purse close. And in that instant, he made a judgment. He didn't know her story, but he didn't need to. He knew exactly what kind of car she would want. "Of course, ma'am. I think we have just the thing for you." Jordan led her over to a row of older, less expensive cars. The kind that didn't have flashy features, the ones with faded paint and dull interiors. Perfect for someone who wouldn't be able to afford anything better, in his mind. He pointed to the oldest model in the lineup, a dusty sedan with chipped wheels. "This one right here is a great choice. It's affordable and practical," he said with a grin, proud of his suggestion. Linda followed him, her pace slow but steady, not showing any sign of impatience. She had been to dealerships like this before. She knew how it worked. "Mum," she said softly, taking a moment to inspect the car. She wasn't interested in it, but she didn't want to upset him either. "It looks nice, but I was hoping for something newer." Jordan's smile faded for a moment, but he quickly recovered. "Newer? Well, Mom, you know that those models can get pretty expensive. A lady like you, well, you'd probably prefer something more practical, right?" His words were casual, but Linda felt the sting. He was assuming things about her, about what she could afford. But Linda didn't rise to it. Instead, she looked around at the newer models, more advanced and shining in their glory. She had the money for them, but no one could guess that from looking at her. "Why don't you show me something else?" Linda said, her voice calm but firm. Jordan hesitated for a moment, surprised that she wasn't settling for what he had offered. His mind raced as he quickly tried to think of what he could sell her. He walked her over to a modest sedan, slightly newer than the others, but still well within the cheap range, in his opinion. "This one's a great choice, ma'am," he said, a little too enthusiastically. "It's got all the basics, a few extra features for comfort, but nothing fancy." Linda nodded, trying to keep her patience. "I see." But deep inside, she felt something stir. She wasn't just some elderly woman who didn't know what she wanted. She had lived through hard times. She had worked at jobs others wouldn't even consider. She had earned every penny she had. She didn't need Jordan's pity or his assumptions. But as she turned to leave, she stopped at the front desk. "I'll be back tomorrow," she said, looking at him one last time. Jordan gave a polite smile, one that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Of course, ma'am," he said. "Take your time." Linda walked out of the dealership without looking back, her head held high, though her heart felt heavy with the weight of his judgment. She knew that in a world that valued looks and wealth, she didn't always fit the mold, but she also knew she wasn't done yet. The next morning, Linda woke up early, her mind already on the task ahead. The soft light of dawn filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow in her modest home. She sat at the kitchen table, sipping her tea slowly, lost in thought. She had made up her mind the night before. She was not going to let one rude salesman decide what kind of car she would get. Linda wasn't the type to be pushed around, especially not by someone who didn't even know her. The world often judged people by their age, their appearance, and how much money they had. But Linda knew better than to let those things define her. She had learned through the years that the people who truly made a difference were not the ones with the most flashy cars or the biggest houses. They were the ones with quiet strength and determination. And today, Linda was going to show that strength. Arriving at the dealership. By the time Linda arrived at the dealership, the morning crowd was already thinning out. The busy buzz of the previous day had settled into a calm, almost empty atmosphere. Most of the younger buyers had left, leaving only a few cars and the salesman lingering inside. Linda stepped out of her old car, the one that had served her well for years, but was now ready to retire. Her steps were steady, and although she still leaned on her cane, there was no hesitation in her movements. She had come here for a reason, and nothing was going to stop her from getting what she wanted. As she walked through the doors of the dealership, she saw Jordan standing near the desk, chatting with another salesman. When he saw her, his face immediately shifted into that same, practiced smile. The kind of smile that he thought made him look polite, but only made him look insincere. Linda took a deep breath and walked over to him. She wasn't going to let him get away with underestimating her again. "Good morning, Mom," Jordan said, his voice too bright, too cheerful. "Back for another look, I see." Linda didn't let the sarcasm in his voice faze her. "Yes," she said simply. "I'm ready to buy a car today." Jordan raised an eyebrow, surprised. He clearly hadn't expected her to come back so soon, let alone speak so confidently. He quickly tried to regain his composure. "Well, we have a few more options I think you'll like," he said, already moving toward the cheaper models again. But Linda stopped him. "No, I'm not interested in those," she said firmly. "I've already decided what I want." Jordan blinked. "Oh. Well, Mom, like I said before, I think those models might be more suitable for someone like you." But Linda cut him off, her voice steady but sharp. "I'm not someone like me. I'm just a woman who knows what she wants. And I know what I can afford." Jordan hesitated, unsure how to respond. He had expected her to back down, to settle for what he thought was best. But Linda wasn't going to make that mistake again. Linda takes control. Linda looked around the showroom, taking in the cars with a discerning eye. She walked past the older models he had shown her the day before, her gaze moving to the newer ones. She didn't need anyone's help to see the difference. She knew what she wanted, and it was right in front of her. "Show me that one," she said, pointing to a sleek, modern sedan sitting in the corner. The car gleamed in the light, its polished surface reflecting her determined expression. Jordan's smile faltered. He had not expected her to point to the most expensive car on the lot. He swallowed hard and tried to steer her toward the cheaper options again. "Ma'am, that's a great car, but—" "No," Linda interrupted, her voice firm and calm. "That's the car I want. Please, show me the details." Jordan didn't know what to say. His brain raced. He had assumed that Linda wouldn't be able to afford anything more than the old dusty cars he had shown her the day before. But now she was asking for the newest, most expensive model on the lot. He wasn't prepared for this. With a reluctant sigh, Jordan walked over to the car. Linda followed him, every step purposeful, her cane tapping gently against the floor. She didn't need to hear his sales pitch. She knew the car's features. She had done her research the night before. But she wasn't here for a lecture. She was here to make a purchase. Jordan's realization. As Jordan spoke, his voice growing more strained, he began to realize something. Linda wasn't like the other customers. She wasn't easily fooled by flashy words and fake smiles. She wasn't a naive elderly woman who didn't know what she was doing. Linda was calm, patient, and deliberate in her decisions. She asked intelligent questions and made it clear that she was no fool. She wasn't just looking for a car. She was making an investment. The longer Jordan spent with her, the more he felt like he was losing control of the situation. His smile, once so confident, had disappeared. Linda was no longer the woman he had expected. She was more than he had bargained for. "All right," he said finally, trying to hide his discomfort. "I'll get the paperwork ready." Linda gave him a simple nod. "Thank you." The unspoken truth. As Jordan left to prepare the paperwork, Linda stood quietly, looking at the car she had chosen. She could feel the weight of the moment settling in. She had done what she came here to do. And although she hadn't said it aloud, Linda knew something that Jordan didn't. She wasn't just buying a car. She was taking back her power. In the world, people often underestimated those who didn't look the part, whether because of age, appearance, or any other reason. But Linda knew that none of that mattered. It was determination, courage, and the will to fight for what you deserved that made all the difference. And today, she had won. Linda sat quietly in the dealership's waiting area, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She had made the decision to buy the car. And now, all that was left was to finish the paperwork. Jordan had gone to prepare the final details, leaving her alone for a moment. As she waited, she could feel the eyes of the other salesmen in the showroom on her. She wasn't imagining it. She could tell that they were watching her. It was the same look they always gave someone like her, someone who didn't seem to fit in with the flashy world of car sales and luxury models. Linda didn't mind. She had learned long ago to ignore the whispers and judgment of others. But today, something felt different. She had already taken control of the situation. She wasn't leaving without her car. And just then, as if the universe had decided to add a little drama to her day, the door to the dealership opened with a soft chime. Linda's head turned as the sound echoed in the quiet room. It was a man, tall, well-dressed, and confident in every step he took. His eyes scanned the showroom, and for a brief moment, Linda saw his gaze meet hers. She felt a flicker of recognition, but she didn't know from where. The man walked towards the front desk, his presence commanding attention. He didn't seem to notice the eyes that followed him. He was used to being the one who was noticed. But Linda couldn't help but feel something shift in the air around him. It was like the atmosphere in the room had changed the moment he walked in. The salesmen who had been watching her just moments before suddenly straightened up in their chairs. They watched the man carefully, some even exchanging silent glances. It was as if they knew who he was, but Linda didn't understand why it mattered. The man approached the desk, and to Linda's surprise, called out to her. "Mom," he said, his voice warm but firm. "I'm here." Linda's heart skipped a beat. She knew that voice. Her son, Michael, the one who had been living far away for years. She hadn't expected him to come, not today. But there he was, standing tall in front of her, dressed in a sharp suit, his face a mixture of confidence and concern. "Michael," Linda said, rising slowly to her feet. She hadn't expected him, but seeing him here, in this place, made everything feel right. She could feel the weight in her chest lifting just by seeing him. The salesman's shock. Jordan, who had been preparing the paperwork for Linda's car, turned around at the sound of Michael's voice. His eyes widened, and his mouth went dry. The man who had just walked in was no ordinary customer. His suit, his posture, his confidence, all of it screamed success. Jordan's heart skipped a beat as he realized who he was looking at. Michael was one of the wealthiest people in the city, a man known for his business empire and connections. He didn't just walk into a dealership. He owned the kind of businesses that could change the fate of a company with a single phone call. And now he was standing here, in front of Linda. Jordan quickly wiped the surprised look off his face, trying to compose himself. But it was too late. The damage had already been done. The car salesman had made a huge mistake. Linda's calm, Michael's command. "Mom, I see you're looking at something nice," Michael said, walking over to her and giving her a gentle hug. Linda smiled softly, proud of her son, but her thoughts were already turning back to the situation at hand. "I'm just finalizing the details, Michael," she said quietly. Her voice was calm, but beneath it, there was a layer of quiet strength. Michael turned to the salesman, his eyes cold now, a stark contrast to the warmth he had shown his mother. "I'm Michael," he said, his voice sharp, businesslike. "I'll be handling this from here on out." Jordan tried to recover, smiling nervously. "Of course, sir. I was just helping your mother here. I'm sure we can work something out." Michael raised an eyebrow. "I'm sure you can." Linda watched in silence as her son took control of the situation. The contrast between the way Michael carried himself and the way Jordan had treated her was striking. Michael was confident, calm, and powerful, everything Jordan had assumed Linda was not. The moment of realization. As Michael and Linda spoke, Jordan's mind raced. He had judged Linda. He had thought she was just another elderly woman looking for a cheap car she could barely afford. But now, standing in front of him, was someone who was clearly not what he had imagined. Michael moved closer to the counter, his presence filling the room. He spoke with authority, asking for the best deal for his mother. And as he did, the salesman who had been watching from the sidelines began to feel a growing unease. Jordan's hand shook slightly as he handed over the paperwork. He had no idea who he was dealing with, but now it was too late to take back his earlier actions. He had misjudged Linda completely, and it was clear now that Michael was the last person anyone wanted to make an enemy of. Michael wasn't just wealthy, he was influential. His family's business interests stretched across industries, and his name carried weight. Jordan had no idea what he had just gotten himself into. Linda's quiet satisfaction. As the papers were signed and the deal was made, Linda could feel a quiet sense of satisfaction settle over her. This wasn't just about the car anymore. It was about respect. It was about standing up for herself, even when others tried to put her down. She had always known that she wasn't someone to be underestimated. But now, with her son by her side, she felt a sense of power and pride she hadn't known in years. She had taken control of the situation, and she was walking out of that dealership with the car she deserved. And as she left, her son by her side, she knew that this would be a day she would never forget. As Linda and Michael stepped outside, the warm afternoon sun greeted them. Linda's steps were slower now, the cane still tapping rhythmically against the pavement, but there was a noticeable change in her demeanor. She felt a calm strength, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Her son's presence had always given her comfort, but today it felt different. It was like the weight of years of judgment had been lifted from her shoulders. Michael glanced at her with a small smile. "You did well, Mom. You stood your ground, and I'm proud of you." Linda smiled back, her eyes softening. "I didn't do it for praise, Michael. I did it because I've learned that people often judge us before they really know us. And it's time to change that." They'd reached the car, and Linda stood still for a moment, taking in the sleek, shiny vehicle that was now hers. The car wasn't just an object to her. It was a symbol of everything she had fought for, everything she had endured in a world that often overlooked people like her. Michael stood beside her, his eyes on the car, but his mind still on the conversation that had taken place inside the dealership. The moment he had walked in and seen the look on Jordan's face, he had known something wasn't right. He had seen the way the salesman had acted toward his mother, the way he had underestimated her. Michael didn't take kindly to that. But what really bothered him was the fact that this wasn't the first time Linda had been treated this way. Michael's reflection. As they got into the car, Michael's thoughts began to shift back to his mother. He had always admired her resilience, but after seeing how she had been treated by Jordan, he couldn't help but wonder how many times she had been overlooked in the past. How many times had she been judged by her age, by her appearance, or by the way the world saw her? Michael had been away for years, working on his own career, building his life. But now, standing here beside his mother, he realized how much he had missed, how much he had taken for granted. He had seen his mother as strong, capable, and independent, but he had never truly understood the battles she fought every day. He had always been proud of her, but today, something inside him had shifted. He would never allow anyone to disrespect her again. The salesman's regret. Back at the dealership, Jordan watched as Linda and Michael drove away. He had been shaken by the interaction, but there was something deeper in his chest, a sense of unease. The realization of his mistake hadn't hit him immediately, but now, as he stood there alone in the showroom, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had just made a grave error. Jordan had worked at that dealership for years. He had dealt with rich clients, demanding customers, and everything in between. But never, in all his time there, had he ever misjudged someone so badly. He had assumed that Linda was just an elderly woman, someone who didn't have the means to buy the car she was looking at. He had treated her like she was invisible, like she didn't matter. And it wasn't just his attitude toward her that bothered him now. It was the fact that he had let his own biases cloud his judgment. His boss, Dave, walked up to him, his face serious. "Jordan, I need to talk to you." Jordan turned to face him, already dreading the conversation. "What's going on?" Dave's expression was hard to read, but his tone was clear. "We just lost that sale, and I don't think you realize how big of a deal that is." Jordan felt his stomach tighten. "What do you mean?" Dave looked at him with disbelief. "That woman you treated so poorly. Her son, he's Michael Blackwell. You know the Blackwell Group, right? They own half of this city's businesses. And when Michael heard what happened, he wasn't happy. Not at all. He told me he's going to have a word with the owner of this dealership." Jordan's face turned pale. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Michael Blackwell, the son of the woman he had mocked, was one of the most influential people in the city. He had made a serious mistake. "I didn't know," Jordan mumbled, his voice shaky. "You should have," Dave snapped. "And now, thanks to your poor judgment, we might lose more than just that sale. We might lose any future business with the Blackwell family. Do you understand how serious this is?" Jordan nodded, his heart sinking. "I understand." The call. Later that evening, Michael sat in his office, reflecting on the events of the day. He had made the call to his family's attorney, making it clear that the dealership's treatment of his mother was unacceptable. He wasn't looking for revenge. He simply wanted the dealership to understand that they couldn't treat people this way, no matter who they were. He hadn't expected the call back so soon. It was almost as if they were in a rush to fix the mistake. The phone rang, and Michael picked it up, his voice calm but firm. "Mr. Blackwell," the voice on the other end said, "this is Dave, the manager at the dealership. I want to personally apologize for the way you and your mother were treated today. We understand now that there were serious mistakes made, and we would like to offer a full refund on the car purchase, along with any additional compensation you feel is necessary." Michael listened quietly, letting Dave's words sink in. He wasn't interested in taking advantage of the situation, but he did want to make sure that Linda's dignity had been restored. "No need for a refund," Michael replied coolly. "Just make sure that your salespeople learn to treat every customer with respect. No one should ever feel like they don't belong, no matter who they are." Linda's quiet victory. The next day, Linda received an unexpected letter from the dealership. It was an apology, written by the owner himself, and it contained an offer for a special upgrade on her car. She was surprised but pleased. It wasn't about the money or the offer. It was about the respect that was now being extended to her. As Linda sat back in her favorite chair, the letter in hand, she smiled. She had known all along that the world had underestimated her, but today they would see that Linda wasn't someone to be looked down upon, and no one would ever treat her, or anyone else like her, like that again. A few weeks had passed since Linda's visit to the dealership. The tension that had hung in the air that day had slowly faded, but the memory of it remained fresh in Michael's mind. He had done what he could to ensure his mother was treated with the respect she deserved, but there was still something that weighed on him. He wasn't satisfied yet. Not completely. One evening, as Michael was walking to his car after a long day at the office, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Linda. "Meet me at the dealership tomorrow morning. I want to see you." Michael was curious. His mother never requested things like this, but he agreed. He knew his mom well enough to understand that when she wanted something, it was important. The next morning, he arrived at the dealership, finding Linda standing by the same car she had bought weeks ago. She wasn't alone. Beside her stood Jordan, the very salesman who had mocked her. Michael's eyebrows furrowed. Why was he here? He wasn't expecting to see Jordan again, not after the apology and the tension that had followed it. Linda turned to face him as he approached, her eyes calm but resolute. "I wanted you to see something, Michael." Michael's gaze shifted between his mother and Jordan, his confusion growing. "What's going on?" Linda stepped forward, her voice steady. "I spoke with the owner of this dealership, and I made one condition for the return of your money." Michael's eyes widened. He hadn't expected anything more to come of this. "You returned the car." Linda shook her head. "No, Michael. I'm keeping the car. But I've made sure that the dealership understands the importance of respect. Jordan is still here, and he's still learning what it means to treat people properly." Michael took a step forward. "What exactly did you mean by that?" Linda smiled softly, turning her gaze to Jordan, who stood quietly beside her. "What I mean is that sometimes people need to be taught. People like Jordan here need to understand that no one is above respect. Not me, not anyone." Jordan, who had been silent until now, looked visibly uncomfortable. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other, clearly embarrassed by the situation. He had learned the hard way that making assumptions about people could cost him more than just a sale. "I've asked him to stay here and learn what it means to truly respect others," Linda continued. "It's not enough to apologize, Michael. It's not enough to just say the right words. People need to take action. A lesson in humility." Jordan finally spoke, his voice small but sincere. "I was wrong," he admitted. "I misjudged you, Mrs. Blackwell, and I'm sorry. I've learned a valuable lesson. I know now that no matter who a person is, whether they're rich or poor, old or young, they deserve respect. I can't undo what I did, but I want to make things right. I'm going to work harder. I want to learn how to truly treat people the way they should be treated." Michael watched the interaction closely, and for the first time since he had walked into the dealership, he saw the sincerity in Jordan's eyes. The man wasn't just apologizing to save face. He was trying to change. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Linda nodded, her expression calm and knowing. "That's all I wanted. People can change if they want to. I didn't ask for anything more than that. I only wanted to make sure that this doesn't happen again, to anyone." A powerful message. As they walked away from the dealership together, Michael glanced at his mother, seeing her in a new light. She wasn't just his mom, the strong woman who had raised him. She was also a force of nature, a person who knew how to demand respect, even in the face of adversity. And as he looked at her, Michael realized that what she had done wasn't just about getting the dealership to apologize or getting the car she deserved. It was about teaching him and everyone around her a powerful lesson. That respect isn't something you should ever have to fight for, but it's something you must never let anyone take away from you. "I'm proud of you, Mom," Michael said, his voice filled with admiration. Linda smiled softly, her eyes gleaming with quiet satisfaction. I didn't do it for praise, Michael. I did it because sometimes we have to show the world that we won't settle for less. And sometimes that's the only way things change. Michael nodded. He understood now. And as they both walked to the car, Linda felt a sense of peace. She had taken control of her own story. She had fought back, not with anger, but with grace and dignity. And now, the world had learned a valuable lesson from her, one that would stay with them long after she had left.